I had an instant several years ago, many years ago, with a former supervisor who is no longer at our Oregon. She and I, we have still a wonderful relationship. So that's why I feel comfortable talking about this here. I basically lost my mind on her in the meeting a long time ago, but I was upset about what I perceived to be consistent under resourcing of my program that I worked really, really hard to resource. And so my boss at that time made an announcement that the resources that I was seeking, that she had secured similar resources, basically social work support for our client for another team. And which meant that all the other teams within my work group had that support except for mine. And I had been fighting for it for, oh my goodness, years and years. So I really took it hard, and I kind of smoldered in the meeting, but then I went to her office and I raised my voice. I lost my temper. I was really upset, and I had been there for a long time. So we had a personal relationship, and I raised my voice and I lost my temper. So in no way am I justifying that as like, oh, it's okay. You should be able to yell when you want to. I'm not advocating for that, but I am saying that there was a very real reason for why I was upset. It was a persistent situation, over the course of many years that led to that point. I made a mistake by showing up in that way, but to me it felt justified in the sense that it was a systemic issue that I was upset about. And
Yeah.
well, long story short, that made it into my evaluation that talked about my anger. There were some pretty steep consequences for that behavior. And it really, and I felt like I absolutely was deemed the angry Latina, and I paid a consequence for it. Ultimately, she and I, we got a mediator, and we actually were able to hash out some long history that kind of led to that moment. And it really, I could honestly and genuinely say it cleared the deck and allowed us to have a wonderful relationship and get back to where we were. So that was really helpful. But I thought that was a good example of how, yes, I could have handled that differently, but there was a very legitimate reason. It's not like I just freaked out over something, but it had very, very steep consequences for me, and absolutely resulted in me, I felt, being labeled as the angry one. And it kept coming up, not only in my evaluation, but like in other areas as well. So I think that's a good example of how when people of color, when women, when we respond to things sometimes, even if it's justified, if we don't respond in a way that is the norm, or I should say, if we respond in a way that makes people feel uncomfortable, oftentimes we're labeled as angry or as the problem. And I think it's a way in which to ignore the underlying issue, is to focus on the tone and not the message, which is one of the white supremacy characteristics, right? Focusing on the delivery without actually getting underneath and understand, why are you so upset? Where is this coming from? How can I better support you and get you the resources that you need? The focus has just become centered on the response to the injustice, not the injustice itself.
Mm-mm. There's a few layers in that. I'm not even sure I'm going to be able to capture all of those. I was thinking, like, first of all, that really sucks. It sucks that that was your experience. It sucks that that's many people's experience. There's part of what you're talking about is like abusive behavior, where someone does something to you and then they don't like what you do to them in response. And what they do to you in response is this like systematic way of suppressing you and making sure you do not do that again. And it's very gaslighty too. And this happens a lot. In your example, That's what happened. Something happened for a long time, and then you have a response after this long of time.
Mhm.
And then because people feel like they have a right to comfort,
Mhm.
people feel like they don't really like emotions or they're afraid or whatever it is. And to make sure you don't do that again, Gina, we're going to make sure that you know here's your parameters. You're going to be in this box. You need to keep it down here because I don't like that. And not necessarily reflective of, well, maybe I shouldn't do this historical thing and do this to this person. I didn't hear that in the story. I wasn't in there, but I didn't hear that in the story. I feel like
Mhm.
you would have said it if it was part of it.
Mhm.
Like that got missed. It was, we need to address your response immediately and make sure it never happens again.
Mhm.
And that's, I don't know, it just makes me really bothered because I know it happens all the time. But that's a really tangible thing that many people do, many
Mhm.
leaders do. And I will also say many white leaders do. I can't say all white leaders do. I can't say no people of color do, but it's for me heightened. And I think that's okay to say. And as I was hearing you, I feel like if you are talking to someone who understands your culture or understands emotion differently and know how it's expressed and why, there's a curiosity that comes with it before an immediate, you need to stop.
Mm.
Like, you need to stop. I remember at the place that we used to work together, I mean, anything could happen on any day. We were a center where anyone could walk in. And I just remember so often people would walk through the front door, and if they were elevated, someone had to come get me. And it's fine, and I would go, and they're yelling, and I'm just trying to hear what it is that they're, like, caring about. They're yelling at me, but I know they're not yelling at me,
Right, right.
you know? Like, now you might have been yelling at that person, but my point is someone who understands emotions
Mhm.
and people who have different ways of expressing themselves
Mhm.
may, for a moment, before they say, "Shh," might just be curious about what is happening and why it's happening
Mhm.
because there's something else there, not just a problem employee who needs to chill out and come to me calm, cool, and collected.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just had to say that.